Believe it or not, the Indiana Hoosiers made history on Saturday against Penn State.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. And a reminder, we are free and available, never behind a paywall, and you can find us wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. The Indiana Hoosiers didn't beat Penn State on Saturday, but they still made history just for all the wrong reasons. We've got that coming up for you on today's show. Plus, we'll take a look at what head coach Mike Woodson had to say following the loss, and seems like it kind of set in. Reality kind of hit him a little bit in post-game following the loss to Penn State. Plus, we'll take a look at football recruiting as the dead period's almost over. Spring is right around the corner. All of that on today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel for us if you're on YouTube. It's free, it's easy, it takes one tap each, and it helps us grow, and you can be a part of that community. Hoosiers make history against Penn State on Saturday after they lose on the road 83-74. No, it didn't have anything to do about the shooting numbers, didn't have anything to do with turnovers or bad play or anything like that. It did, in fact, though, have to do with the loss that you took, yet again, to Penn State. And there's a group of schools historically that this Indiana program, our Indiana Hoosiers, have always had success over, because historically, we are a better program than these handful of programs when it comes to college basketball. And I'm looking at the three programs of Penn State, Nebraska, and Northwestern. Those three programs in college basketball, they've had their moments, right? They've had their years, they've had their teams, they've had their players, they've had their coaches. They've had times where they've made a little noise, made a little run, whether it be in the Big Ten regular season, in the Big Ten tournament, or in the NCAA tournament. But there's always been a constant that Indiana has gotten wins over those programs. Not this year. For the first time ever, we as a program finished the year without beating any of those teams. The Hoosiers went 0-5 against Penn State, Nebraska, and Northwestern this season. And that's the first time ever that we have not beaten those teams, one of them at least once, in the regular season. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. It's embarrassing. It is really just a testament to where we are as a program. And we've been talking about this. And I know a lot of you have had these thoughts of, man, look at how far down we've gone. Look at how low we've steeped as Indiana fans, and our expectations are through the floor, because it's true. Because it's true. Did anybody really expect to go on the road and beat Penn State over the weekend? I don't think I did. And guess what? You didn't, because you didn't play good. You played good at times, but you didn't play good enough to win, and it showed. What do you expect when you shoot 13% from the free throw line and you shoot 50% from the free throw line, or 13% from the three-point line and 50% from the free throw line? You get what I'm saying here. The numbers are so bad, they're all jumbled up in my head. What do you expect? Penn State's going to beat you. Anybody's going to beat you when you shoot like that. And it's just not okay to make history on the wrong side of it. And that's where we are. And it's been so long since we have been back and relevant, truly relevant for a consistent amount of time. Sure, we've had good teams these last couple of years, but nobody was worried about us coming in this year. And we had the players for people to be worried. That's what makes me upset. That's what makes me mad, is people should have been worried about us. People should have been scared of the potential that this Indiana squad had. But here we are, and they have significantly underperformed. And making this kind of history is not why we hired Mike Woodson. Making this kind of history is not why we've moved on from the previous coaches that we've had potential but couldn't get it done. That's why you got rid of them, because they couldn't do it. But you bring in a former Indiana legend, a former Indiana guy who is backed by the boosters, who is apparently getting support on the back end, but there's a lot of hell being raised about him otherwhere and other places. You cannot be making history on the wrong side of it. This is bad history. Bad. Indiana should never go winless against programs like Nebraska and Penn State and Northwestern. I'm sorry. No disrespect to those programs, but that's a fact. It should never have gotten this low. It should never have gotten this bad. And I don't know if that is on us as fans, on the administration, on the athletic department, on the coaching staff, the players. I think you could say it's a combination of it all. But for somebody like Mike Woodson, who has been an up and down head coach in his career, to be here, to be this representative of our team, our university, and have this kind of track record in the season completely spiraling out of control. Not that it ever really got up off the ground very much. So you could say there's not a whole lot of room for it to spiral and hit the ground. But man, this is a disaster. It's a disaster. Both engines are on fire. They've fallen off. They're gone. We're skidding across the ground on the body of the plane and hoping we hit something to make it stop. And I just don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's the case. And I don't know about you, but this feels really crappy. It feels really bad to be in this spot. We're one of the laughing stocks of the Big Ten right now. And should never, ever, ever be the case with this brand, this school, and this program. It should never happen. And yet here we are. Not only are you winless against those teams, you're currently on a 4-game losing streak. You've had multiple losing streaks this season. You've gotten blown out in almost every big game that you've played. Your road performances are absolutely abysmal. And there's no positivity, and there's nothing good to hang on to or grab onto and be excited about. And I put that on Mike Woodson. I put that on him as a head coach. That's your job, is to fix it. And that just hasn't happened this year. And you're going to hear that. I'm sure you've listened to the press conference and what he had to say following the Penn State loss. I think he accepted that. And I think it's time to really consider whether he needs to be here or not. And I know it's only year 3, and I'm not a fan of kicking a guy to the curb after just 3 years, because I don't think that's long enough in college sports, not just basketball, but college sports. But there was an eerie vibe around the words he used and the way he spoke and the way he looked in that post-game press conference. And when you're on the wrong side of history, that's not where you want to be. And speaking of that press conference, we're going to talk about that, mention and react to what he had to say following this loss, 83-74. Hoosiers make history, winless against Penn State, Nebraska, and Northwestern for the first time ever. We'll take a look at what Mike Woodson had to say following that loss, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Look, take $5, sign up for FanDuel, take $5, put it on whatever Big Ten basketball team or a baseball team, or you've got the NBA going on, hockey going on right now, golf if you want to. I don't care. $5 if you win. FanDuel is going to give you $150 just like that. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. A shout out to the everydayers. You are the reason that we are here. Be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications wherever you get your podcast, because we are free wherever you get your podcast. Indiana got swept by Penn State this season, losing on Saturday, 83-74. And Mike Woodson, in his post-game press conference, man, he looked defeated. I mean, just looked defeated. And rightfully so. This team is defeated. The team is not good. The team is in a bad place. And every time we go through this and we do this segment on what he had to say following the loss, he seems to have some positivity, right? He's, I like the way this guy played, and I like the way we fought in these moments, and this guy's got to step up and be better, and whatever, right? Seems to be kind of middle ground, doesn't go too far one way or the other. This one, man, this was tough. It was tough to watch, tough to listen to, and as we read through it again, it's kind of tough to break it all down, but I'm going to give you some of my reactions, and I want to hear what you think about it as well. They were to start off, he was asked about the 8-0 run there at the end of that first half with Ace Baldwin, who just had a wonderful, wonderful first half, scoring all 8 of those points. And said, how much of that is a decision for you on a game-by-game basis in regards to sitting guys down, which, of course, we were in foul trouble yet again and talking about McKenzie and Baco. And Woodson said, I elected to go elsewhere with CJ. I thought CJ would come in and give us a lift. Eventually, we have to look at our bench too and see if they can give us something off the bench. Ware had 2 fouls, and I took him out. And, he was trying, and I'm not even going to read the rest of it because he was trying to defend his game plan, and I get it. But the foul trouble's been an issue all season long, whether it be a guard or whether it be Ware or whether it be Renew. Like, there's always foul trouble. And we're not deep enough as a team or good enough as a team to have foul trouble, man. And the problem too is we don't have true rotations. We don't have rotations, and we don't have anybody on the bench that's good enough to come in and give you a lift, to give you a spark that he's trying to talk about here, or just to even keep it minimal and try to keep it the same and take up a couple of minutes before somebody else comes back in. We don't have that. And that's got to be extremely hard to manage as a head coach. I get it, but that's your job, man. That's your job to make sure that that's not an option. That's not a thing to where you do have guys on the bench that you can trust. And hey, let's teach guys how to play without fouling. What a crazy idea that is. Here's a question, says, I know it's becoming a bit of a frustrating refrain, but 3-point shooting. What is it that isn't working? Whether it's the way you're getting shots and, just ask about the 3-point shooting. He said, we're getting good looks. We're getting a lot of good looks, which I agree with. I think we've had great looks almost all year long. I just think from a mental standpoint, I've got to get them comfortable, and they just got to make them. We haven't made them this season. We've had our ups and downs and stretches, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, you went 2 of 15 from 3 on Saturday. Penn State went 9 of 21. The 3-point line's just been abysmal on both ends of the floor. We can't make them. We also can't stop the other team from making them. You get outscored by 21 points behind the 3-point line. You lose by 9 points. Shocker. You also, just to throw in the free throw line thing, you lose by 9 points. Guess how many free throws you missed? 9. Exactly. My case in point, this team can't shoot. They can't shoot. Which brings up the transfer portal, which is why the Hoosiers have to go get somebody, multiple somebodies in the transfer portal that can shoot, because it's just unacceptable. You've got a college basketball team that can't shoot, man. You're not going to win games. No brainer. He was asked about the big picture. And this is where it really started to get depressing. Is that the right word? I mean, it kind of felt that way, man. It felt that way because I think he just started to accept it. He got defeated right here. He said, you guys are 0-5. The question was, you guys are 0-5 this season against Northwestern, Nebraska, and Penn State, which is what we've talked about today. Something that doesn't really happen much. Hasn't happened ever. What's your reaction to that this season? And Mike Woodson says, I'm upset with the way we've played and the way I've coached this team this whole season. We've lost more games at home than we did the last 2 seasons, and that's just not good. I always feel like I can take any team and win with them. We've had our struggles this year, but we've got to try and finish this season on a high note. We've got Wisconsin next, and they're playing pretty well and sitting up at the top. We've got to see what we're made of. And the follow-up to that was, you say you're upset with the way you've coached. What are things you could take a mulligan? All coaches, and Woodson says, all coaches, when they coach, they'll think they can win. I've struggled with this team this year. I won't blame my players. I always put it on Mike Woodson, and that's how it should be. I'm a big boy, and we'll try to continue to grow this thing and figure it out. We've still got a lot of work on our hands. And this is where I want to kind of dive in here for a minute. It's okay to think and to know that you haven't done a perfect job as a head coach, because nobody does a perfect job. And it's okay to think, yeah, there were some areas that we could have done better. But to just flat out be disappointed in yourself the way that you coached, and to be disappointed with how your team is playing, that's not what you want to hear. It may be true, but it's not what you want to hear. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have said it, because I think he is disappointed in his team. And I'm kind of glad that he said he's disappointed in himself to an extent. He's at least taking it on and understanding he has not done a good job. But again, I go back to the phrase and to the line of thinking that I have when it comes to our program. This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. Sorry that you've struggled with these guys and you've struggled with this team. That sounds like a personal problem to me. I'm sorry. Sounds like you have to be better. Sounds like you need to coach them better and be a better head coach for them. There's good players on that team. There's good guys in that locker room and on the floor. But nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And I'm not saying anything about Mike Woodson as a person. I don't know him like that. But looking at it, watching every game, covering every game, doing this show every single day, man, we are tired as a fan base of this team and this program being mediocre. We're tired of it, because that's not who we are. That's not who we are. And for you to say I'm upset with the way we've played and the way that I've coached this whole season, that's the wordage he used. I'm disappointed, or I'm upset with how I've coached this team this whole season. Tells me nothing changed behind the scenes either. Not only did it not change on the floor during the 40 minutes of importance each and every night, but it didn't change on the back end either. And whether he was trying something new that just didn't work this year, or he kept doing the same thing that was covered up from the last 2 years because of good players, I think that's more the likely option here. You've got to be able to change. You have to be able to adjust. And there are so many old school coaches and old school guys like Mike Woodson that are figuring that out and finding that really hard to do. Look at the big names that are no longer in this sport. Look at the big names that are no longer in college athletics that are leaving by the day. They can't adjust. They can't adjust. They can't change. And if they have to go away from something they've done for the last 30 years, they'd rather quit. They'd rather walk away. And maybe that's the option here. Maybe that's what has to happen. I don't know. I don't want to go through a coaching change. That's a miserable process. But if you are upset with how you've coached the entire year, and he said this right here. He puts it on himself. It's time to look in the mirror. And if you can't change, it's time for you to go. If you can't fix it, it's time for you to go. And I think that's a conversation that's going to be had at the end of this season between Mike Woodson and the Indiana program, the Indiana athletics department, the Indiana staff. That's a conversation that has to be had. What's your plan? How are you going to change? Because what you're doing is not working. And it's time to fix that. And this was one of the just more upsetting press conferences post-game because, again, he was just defeated here. Very defeated, very down. And I think reality set in following this loss to Penn State. Final segment coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. We'll take a look on the football side of things. We are less than a week away from the dead period opening up. Recruiting right around the corner. Spring practice as well. Lots of excitement for Curt Cignetti and the Indiana football program. That's coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. I hope you're enjoying it and having a lot of fun, because I am every single day. Football-wise, we'll take a step away from the basketball side. Football, there is a lot to be excited about. New coach, new era, everything. And when it comes to football, the recruiting dead period has been going on for the last couple of weeks, but that's about to be done. And the list of guys that are going to be here for the 2025 class and beyond, it's pretty exciting, man. Some big-time guys. And what's really exciting, too, is Curt Cignetti and this staff have gone south. They've gone down south, and they're getting guys from South Carolina, Florida, Georgia. Like, they're going to get recruits down there that are interested in us. They're interested in Bloomington and what's happening. And with a new head coach and a new coaching staff, it's very difficult to get started in recruiting. It is. It's very difficult to walk in to a new place, new time, new everything, new conference, everything, and convince recruits, hey, this is where you want to be. We're doing something special. It's hard to convince them of that. But the good ones, the really good ones, coaches, I mean, can use that to their advantage. Hey, here's what we're doing. Here's our plan. Here's how you fit into that plan. Why don't you come and check us out and be a part of this rebuild? Why don't you come and be a part of one of the most exciting turnarounds in college football? That's what you have to sell. That's how you have to sell it. And I think that's what this coaching staff is doing. Just listen to the states of guys that are interested and going to be coming on visits. Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Illinois, South Carolina. Again, multiple guys from multiple states. And with that dead period almost over, I'm hoping guys are going to be flocking here. And I think that's going to be the case. It may not be immediate, may not be right out of the gate, but I think over time, as other kids come and visit and start chirping and talking, because they all do, they all talk. Hey, I took a visit to Indiana last week. It was pretty sweet. It was pretty awesome. Curt Cignetti, pretty cool guy. Coaching staff, pretty great. Facilities, they're there and getting better. And yeah, I think you should check it out too. That's how this whole thing starts, man. It's a whole big, it's like a high school. It's like a big high school when it comes to recruiting. It's all drama, man. It's all, everybody's talking, everybody's chatting, everybody's sharing information. That's how recruiting works. And if you can leave an impact on one or two big name players, you're going to attract other big name players too. So I'm excited for the recruiting side of things. I'm also excited for spring practice to get into the meat of it, start figuring out who's who. Lots of new names and faces on this team, man. It's going to take us a while to learn them all, see them all, hear what the coaches and Cignetti have to say, and hopefully start to get and see a little bit of separation. With it being a new staff and a new roster mainly, I think there's going to be a lot of positions that are still open after spring where there's not just a lockdown, this guy is it, he's starting in September, there's no doubt about it. You'll have a few, but I don't think, A, I don't think it's going to happen, and B, I don't necessarily think it's smart to do that. To say, okay, it's April, we're good, nobody's beating this guy. I don't think that's smart right now. I really don't. I think if you can, especially in those rooms for us where running backs and the linebackers and even in the secondary too, where there's just so much talent and so much potential there, I think you just leave it open and let's see what happens. And then after spring practice, then you'll have the portal window open up for football. I know it's crazy. There's 100 different portal windows, it seems like, but then that'll open up. And this coaching staff will be able to sit down. They'll be able to assess what we've got and say, all right, look, you don't need to be here anymore. You need to get out, go do your thing. We think you could be better elsewhere, right? But then it's like, okay, and there's probably going to be an oh crap moment where, all right, we need to go get this position, 3 at this spot, 1 at this spot, 2 over here. We got to go and get them right now. And that's how spring works, man. That's how spring works. And I think that's how this spring is going to work for Indiana. But I think you bring enough guys back. From Indiana that can kind of be the, I don't know, the anchors, if you will, be the guys that have the familiarity factor, if you want to put it that way, where they know what's going on. They're Indiana guys, and so they understand what's happening here. But everybody has to be able to adjust too. And I think that's going to be important with this new staff, where they're bringing a lot of their own guys, which is good. A lot of James Madison players, so they understand the expectations. And it's something we just need to be excited about, man. Let's feed into it. Let's dive into it and have an open mind when it comes to this football season for us Indiana fans, because we just don't know what to expect. And good news is it can't get much worse. Knock on wood, I hope. Can't get much worse. And all we want to see is some improvement. Nobody's expecting to go out and win 10 games. Nobody's expecting to win the Big Ten. Nobody's expecting to make a playoff or do anything crazy like that. We just want to see some changes. Have some positive momentum, be moving in the right direction as the year goes on and as we get into year 2, 3, and beyond. That's what's going to leave impacts for recruiting, transfer portal, and all of that good stuff. That's where funding comes from. That's where facility upgrades come from. All of that feeds into early on-field success and just a game plan, a roadmap of how you're going to get this program and make it better. And that's what's on the plate of Curt Cignetti and this staff, and I'm excited for it. We're going to keep talking football here on the show as we truly get into updates about it when it comes to recruiting, transfer portal, and spring practice. We'll have all of that for you here on the show, so be sure that you're tuning in for that. Going to be a lot of fun. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you making this your go-to spot, your first listen each and every single day. Again, if you're on YouTube, it helps us out a lot if you'll subscribe to the channel. We're growing almost 2,000. Help us get there. That'd be really, really important and be a monumental moment for this channel. So subscribe, like the video, comment. It helps us get it out there. If you're on your audio platforms, free and available wherever you get your podcast. So be sure that you check us out on there as well. Until tomorrow, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.